join today the second episode of our three-part webinar series, Guest Lectures at Glean Academy. So today's second episode focuses on adoption and turning AI adoption into business impact. And we have with us today Alexandra Munoz, a sales enablement leader at Reddit. So a couple housekeeping notes before I give Alexandra a chance to introduce herself. This lecture will be recorded, and we'll send you the recording as soon as we can after today's session. And we'll also take a few questions at the end. So please know this is meant to be interactive. Make sure to use the chat module, and we'll answer as many questions as we can and as time permits at the end. So with that, Alexandra, very excited for all of us to learn from you. I will let you jump in to introduce yourself.
Awesome. Thanks, Lauren. Hi, everyone. I'm Alexandra. I am on our sales enablement team at Reddit, and I primarily lead our sales tooling enablement. But for Glean specifically, have taken a broader Reddit-wide role, growing adoption of Glean across our entire Reddit teams. And we are such fans of Glean over here. It's been a true game changer across our organization. It's not often that you find a tool that becomes so beloved and so widely adopted. So excited to be here today. Thank you for having me, Lauren.
Of course. Thank you for being here. So to get things started, maybe we just start with having you tell us a little bit more about the ways in which you use AI at Reddit and or across your team today.
Yeah, so when we first got started with Glean, we really started with the basics, which was search and prompt adoption. And we found that people fell in love with Glean at first because they could actually find the resources that they were searching for. It was pretty simple, but it solved a real need for them. And then kind of as they started to try prompts and they started to unlock more and more value from Glean, adoption really kind of grew from there. We also started working closely with cross-functional teams across Reddit to build out apps, which obviously now have been converted to agents. And that's where we got to go a little bit deeper with our different use cases and kind of build out more complex solutions.
That's amazing. And so at this point, thinking about where you're at today, what kind of adoption numbers are you seeing with Glean?
We see really high adoption. I think when we initially started, it was kind of much lower. Search grew really quickly, but from kind of a current state standpoint, we're seeing like very consistent weekly active usage across the entire Reddit team, which has been fantastic to see. And the other thing I'll call out is the adoption of more advanced features like agents now, previously apps, has also grown really tremendously. And that's been kind of huge for us as folks have really been able to unlock more value from Glean. They're not seeing it as just a way to search and to find information, but really a way to be more productive in their day-to-day and take advantage of kind of the full suite of what Glean has to offer.
That's amazing. Well, so great to hear. And I love just getting to hear about Reddit's journey all along the way of moving sort of from search all the way into great agent adoption that you mentioned you are seeing. And I would also say, that kind of adoption is no small feat, which is actually getting us to the core of what we want to cover in today's sessions of how do you grow user adoption? How do you move away from sort of small pilots or thinking about just search and kind of start to hit your stride a little bit more with larger scale projects that are actually kind of moving the needle at the company level. So would love to get your perspective here on, where do you even start with something like that?
Absolutely. So we kind of approached it in three main ways. I'll hit on kind of three topics here. The first was really starting small and being able to solve real problems so that we could demonstrate immediate value from Glean. The second piece was around kind of meeting people where they are in their existing workflows today. And the third was focusing on kind of building out our champion network. So on the first piece, this was kind of really about kind of showing instead of telling. So when Glean was first rolled out, the team started with a few use cases that were really designed to show real value. We started with Glean answering questions in a Slack thread, for example. And that's how things really took off. When other teams saw what was possible, they started asking for the same thing, and it really grew from there. We also started by granting access just to our sales and our engineering teams before rolling it out across the whole organization. And that allowed us to kind of tailor the enablement and the use cases and the adoption to a smaller set of users to kind of grow out those use cases. And as people fell in love with Glean, people explored more features on their own. They would talk about it with other teams that were outside of those teams, and demand kind of grew from there in terms of wanting it to be rolled out across the broader organization. So being able to kind of start smaller allowed us to get it right and to fine tune before scaling across the entire organization. And then on kind of the second piece around meeting people where they are, this was more around kind of embedding Glean into everyday workflows through habit formation. So we have a big Slack culture. So making it a part of Slack was really important for us. People were already going to their support channels in Slack, and now they're used to seeing Glean respond, and it kind of naturally scaled to other channels as people saw it working well and came to expect Glean to be responding in these channels. Change can be really hard. People can feel that they don't have time to invest in learning a new tool or learning a new process or going to a new interface. So the integration into existing workflows and tools has been really key for us. And in addition to Slack, the browser extension has been a game changer. Every time you open a new tab, just getting folks to start with Glean so they don't have to remember to navigate to Glean. And we enable on that. We trained folks on the browser extension and just installing it. And it's part of our new hire onboarding as well. But kind of the overall goal in this section is kind of building that muscle memory and reducing friction for them as much as possible so that it truly becomes a habit to use Glean. A couple of other things that we thought about was kind of enabling triggers for using Glean. So if it's the end of a meeting, have Glean draft the next steps. If you have a weekly status report, that's a trigger to have Glean draft the update, those tasks that you're doing on a routine basis, whether it's daily or weekly, just forming that habit around having Glean do the work for you. And I know now with scheduling coming too, that becomes even easier to kind of set up that automatic habit there.
Definitely. I think that's a great point of, trying to meet people where they're at in turning something into a habit. And, we have a new work AI lab that's conducting research across what it is like and what is being involved in incorporating AI into workflows. And one finding that recently came out that we thought was fascinating was that the average worker is moving through 1,200 app switches per day. So I think that's a really great call out of trying to minimize that and allowing, Glean to come in and support workflows where exactly they're happening rather than trying to get folks across an organization to incorporate something else and additional when clearly we already are using many, many things.
Wow, that's an incredible stat. I can imagine it, but also can't believe that it is that frequent. But that's exactly right. That's what we were hoping to do, is just remove the friction and make it effortless for people to use Glean and be able to take advantage of the capabilities. I think that's the beauty of Glean, is that it does just connect with all of the different data sources across your company that you're already using and that people are already kind of familiar with and used to, and just bringing it all in one place so that they have access to everything that they're already using. So that's a very interesting stat to learn about, and seems like it's a similar approach that you've seen with others as well.
Definitely. And I'm very curious to hear, you mentioned champion building as your third sort of prong here. Very curious to hear how you've gone about that at Reddit too.
Yeah, I think with champion building, you have to really understand kind of the two sides of the coin with the Glean app library, or now agent library. On the one hand, you have those people that are going to be really leaned in builders. They're the ones that are creating agents. They're going to help drive adoption across the broader set of users. And then on the other side, you have those consumers of the agents. They might, dabble here and there with their own agent creation, but by and large, they're going to use the agents that are already built and templates that are already created. And you have to build champions and enable those two groups very differently. And at Reddit, we leaned in heavily with our Glean builders initially. So these were primarily cross-functional teams that had, a real problem to solve, and also had a point person on their team that was kind of leaned into AI and wanted to learn how to build and Glean, or they already had experience doing that in other platforms. So we started with that group and we leveraged them to build out a best in class library, which was initially prompts and apps, now is agents. And this was the group that was key for us to really evangelize the agents that they built and kind of spread the word naturally to get people excited about Glean, and really create value for the end users. That's when we saw adoption of features beyond search skyrocket, because we had these champions going out and promoting their own apps and agents. They were really proud of what they built, and they brought a lot of people into the Glean ecosystem for us. So that was kind of on the builder side. And then on more of the general users, when I think about champion building, I think about building a group of those subject matter experts that are kind of leaned in, your power users that are consuming agents. They might be some of your top adopters of Glean, and they're going to evangelize usage with their own teams and share best practices on how to use the agents, and also get people excited about Glean. So we're actually starting a monthly meeting with our power users that have shown a big interest in Glean and AI tools overall, that we're going to use to share best practices and just foster connection across this group that's really leaned in to help us uncover more use cases. We want to identify additional use cases that might be pain points, have these folks help evangelize and get people excited about what Glean can do just naturally in their existing team forums and meetings.
That's amazing. And I think that's where I hear of a lot of success happening across a number of our customers. A question on those power user groups: Are you finding that a lot of these power users are technical folks? Are they more business folks? Is it kind of a mix there? What are you seeing as kind of the breakdown at Reddit, at least?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say it's a mix. So we do have some folks that, are technical. They're very strong at kind of building, and they actually tend to fall into like the builder group more commonly for us, where they're, building their own agents and they want to get them out there. And then I would say we do have a group of power users that, are just very interested in driving productivity, learning about AI. They may not be technical, or they may be, but they have kind of a passion for learning about it, and they want to kind of help scale it out, or they can see the power of what Glean can do, and they want to help us drive adoption. And I think the beauty about Glean is you don't have to be overly technical to figure it out. You can learn to build an agent, even if you don't have a technical background. And the templates are actually very key for that too. You have a template of different agents that you can build, that you can kind of take a look behind the scenes of how it's set up and tinker with it and create for your own use case. So I think it's just a matter of building that muscle memory and carving out the time and wanting to learn how to do it. And we know that not everyone will, which is why we also have our agent library that people can use without needing to invest on that side. But for those that, are very passionate and want to learn in that area, we do provide kind of some additional support and enablement to help people do that.
That's amazing. I think everything you shared is so helpful and definitely will resonate with hopefully everyone here. Kind of to summarize, I think the 3 points then that I heard are, maybe more than 3, but really focusing on showing, not telling, and starting small, figuring out what a couple real problems are that you can solve. And from there, you can show to other people to get them excited and to start to think about what's possible. Secondly, meeting people where they are and embedding something like Glean into their everyday workflows, not asking them to take on something additional. And then lastly, in champion building, really harnessing anyone who's excited, it sounds like, really seeing if you can harness that excitement and turn that into an opportunity for more learnings for you and for your team of what use cases might be helpful here, where you can lean in more, where people want to build, and kind of taking that excitement and running with it. Does that feel like a fair summary?
Absolutely. You nailed it.
Awesome. Well, you nailed it. So thank you. Well, awesome. We've definitely alluded to agents kind of throughout this conversation so far. I'd love to kind of dig in a little bit more on this, as agents is newer functionality from Glean. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe your team launched agents somewhere around mid-July, so fairly recently. I think, our audience would definitely benefit from hearing how that went and how you handled this larger scale AI launch.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think Agents was a really exciting launch for our team. Initially, we started with a really small Tiger team. These were some of our power agent creators, some of the folks that I alluded to earlier that kind of helped us roll out prompts and apps that were really familiar with the Glean ecosystem already. And we created a beta testing group of these users so that they could start understanding agents, building out some new best in class agents so that we could get ready for launch, and also just testing the features. And then we rolled it out to everyone on the 15th of July. We decided to open up the agent creator access to everyone, but we do have the publishing process gated. So really the reason for that was, one, to prevent agent sprawl, too many agents being tough to kind of discover and navigate and find the right agents. And then two was to ensure that high quality agents were kind of being rolled out across teams. But we did feel it was important to open up the creator access to everyone so that people could start experimenting and testing. And we know that not everyone is going to, want to publish an agent. They might just have some use cases that they want to build for their own workflows, while others might really put in the effort and fine tune things and get it to a place that they feel like they want to share it across either their team or the broader Reddit organization. So we have our publishing process through our Slack channel. Once someone has created an agent that they want to publish, they share it, and then we review it and we'll publish it for them. We also do have a small group of our power agent creators that have been trained on agents, and they have agent moderator access and can publish on their own. So the key there is just really providing the right enablement, making sure folks felt comfortable in the platform, and also were kind of technically savvy enough to kind of manage the publishing process for themselves. And then the other thing that's kind of just around like logistically how we've set things up and how we're like approaching agents overall. I would say when it comes to the actual launch, the thing that we did to generate excitement and interest across our teams was we launched what we called a Gleanathon. So instead of a hackathon, we did an idea-a-thon to collect use cases and make Glean kind of more approachable for non-technical folks. We know we have a lot of people out there that have great ideas or experiencing pain points that they want to solve, but they might not either have the time to invest in learning how to build an agent initially, or just not know where to get started. So this was a live moment for us. We used the time to get people excited about agents and what they could do. We also did a spotlight on some of our top agents that were part of our beta testing group that I mentioned. So we had a few MVP agents that they could start using today, and obviously all the apps also migrated over to agents. So the apps that they were used to using were there and ready for them to experiment with as well. And we did a live demo on how to build an agent, just started with kind of the basics and the building blocks. And that's where the template library that I mentioned really came in handy with getting people familiar with how to set up an agent and tweak an existing agent for their own use case, which can take the heavy lift of building an agent off for them. And then, as part of our Ideathon, we collected the use cases. We had people vote, and we offered support to them to build out the top use cases, which was kind of the carrot for investing time and helping us, build out this library of use cases. We got a lot of submissions. I was really impressed with just how much interest there was, and how many people wanted to be a part of our Ideathon. It's great to see people just get so creative. They have real pain points they face every day. There's repeatable tasks that take too long, or processes that can be optimized. And when you talk about agents initially, it can feel overwhelming, or people don't understand it enough to know what might be possible. But when you start with the daily pains they're experiencing and those frustration points, then it's more tangible. And then we start to help them connect the dots on what's possible with Glean agents and how they can alleviate the friction in their day to day. We also spent some time on how to write a better prompt. So many of our users, were writing maybe a one liner and not satisfied necessarily with what they were seeing all the time. So just focusing on up leveling the skill set across our teams to understand how to get the output they're looking for with better prompting and better interaction with Glean overall. So we had a really good feedback on the session, and I would recommend an Ideathon. I wish we would have done something similar earlier. We didn't need to wait for agents to do something like that. And I'm also thinking about how do we build upon that initial kind of first Ideathon and think about like a 201 version to go a little bit deeper in with agents.
Yeah, that's what I was sort of thinking about too. I guess it's been, exactly 2 months since you launched agents. And I'm curious what you're thinking through next, if you're open to sharing a little bit more of how you're approaching kind of phase two enablement of agents and prompting.
Yeah, so we are continuing to build out those use cases. So we have the submissions. We're kind of in this next step now of getting the right resources in place and connecting people with the right teams to get some of these use cases built out. The other thing I would say we're thinking about is just adoption of any new Glean features. I know that, things are, the power of what you can do with agents is continuing to expand. So using all of those opportunities as moments to continue to activate Glean agent adoption and usage. And then the third piece I would say is just measuring the value from all of the work that we're doing. We've focused a lot on adoption as a metric and kind of growing our adoption, but really taking that next step to understand what the impact is that we're driving. So as part of our Ideathon, for example, we captured across kind of the ideas how much time people were spending on the various tasks that they input to start to kind of quantify some of the time savings that we might be able to realize from building out these agents to solve some of these pain points. So those are a couple of ways that we're thinking about it. But that is a big next step for us, is kind of nailing down our measurement methodology and ensuring that we're able to communicate the value that we know Glean is driving, but being able to do it in a measurable and quantifiable way.
Absolutely. And arguably, maybe the hardest part of the entire process of incorporating AI into workflows, I would say, from what I've learned and seen through working with customers here, is exactly that. And that actually is a great moment for me to just give a little plug to our next session, AI 301, where we actually will dig into ROI and building and measuring. So for any of you with similar questions, this next session in our guest lectures series will be fantastic to sort of talk through that as well. But Alexandra, back to you. That is incredibly helpful. So thank you so much for sharing all of that, and congratulations on what sounds like an amazing launch with a lot of excitement. I'd love to maybe close out these questions before we open it up to some of the great ones I'm seeing in the chat with asking you to maybe share a piece of advice. So what's something that you wish you knew sooner that you think would have helped you in scaling adoption of Glean across Reddit?
Yeah, I think on this one, something that came out in the Ideathon, I mentioned we had a section as part of the Ideathon around how to write a better prompt. I think it was actually just going back to some of the basics, like realizing even though we are pretty far along our journey in terms of rolling out Glean across our organization, that people are really busy. They have a lot on their plate. And I think sometimes we can take it for granted that people are fully kind of up leveled on how to actually write a strong prompt and how to get the results that they're looking for from a tool like Glean. And so that section was really valuable for us. We actually had a user come in and speak about a framework that they use for writing better prompts and shared some examples of how they transformed their own prompts and how they were able to get better responses from Glean chat overall. And so I think just remembering that there's a lot of opportunity to actually enable on the basics still is really important. I had so many people reach out to me after the session about that section specifically, wanting the slides and wanting to do like a broader session around that topic. So I think just coming back to the basics and remembering that those are still important, even though there are a lot of other great features out there. So I'm starting to think about how we kind of segment our enablement for where people fall along the kind of maturity curve of their adoption of Glean and making sure that we have the right resources for folks, no matter what stage they are at in leveraging Glean and other AI tools.
I think that's amazing advice. You're absolutely right. There's so much to learn, even just from assistant and basic prompting before you even get into agents. And it's easy to get so excited. So I can absolutely appreciate that. But that's fantastic advice. Thank you for sharing.
Of course.
Um, with that, I'd love to open it up to, we've got a number of questions in our chat. So I will just go, I'll start from the top. We'll go down the line and can take about 10 or so minutes of questions. So with that, first question here from Lynn, how has AI fundamentally changed the Reddit user experience or enabled new product features that weren't possible before?
I think that's a really great question. I think um, in terms of kind of our users, I would say thinking about kind of the current experience and how they're kind of interacting with AI on a day-to-day basis, it's really transformed just from a productivity standpoint on what's possible. So I kind of mentioned this example up front around how they're interacting with Slack to get the information that they need. Um, Now users kind of come to expect that Glean is going to respond if they have a question. They don't need to dig through long communication documents or search in a number of different places to find the information that they're looking for. They are trained to go to Slack, go to their usual channels, ask their question, and they're going to get a response that's customized for them. And we've had a number of different users highlighting how much time Glean has saved them just by finding something quickly, or we've even had examples where we're unlocking revenue due to kind of some of the suggestions that Glean is providing on how they might approach a conversation with their client, for example.
That's amazing. All right. Next question. What are some of the top AI adoption challenges that you'd say you've faced in this journey?
That's a great question. I think there's still, challenges that we face today and some that we've overcome that I've talked about a little bit. I would say the first was just needing to change people's mindset. It's just a really big leap from searching for and finding the information that they need to actually turning to Glean first when they have a challenge. So, if you're spending too long on a task, that's a great prompt to remind yourself, hey, like, is this something that I could use Glean for? Because it's taking me a significant amount of time. And so I think one of the challenges was just helping to shift people's mindset on what they could use AI for. The other one was around just making sure that our information is up to date. You know, a lot of the help tickets that we get where Glean might have not provided an answer that is expected, it's because the underlying information that Glean is pulling from is out of date. And so ensuring that we have the right kind of knowledge management strategy in place so that our documentation is up to date and accurate so that Glean is able to provide the right answers. I think that's been a big undertaking that our team is focusing on. Other challenges from an adoption standpoint, I would say, I had alluded to them earlier, but just another tool that people have to use. You know, we've got a lot of tools, we have a lot of things that we're asking people to do, and that's where the embedding into existing workflows becomes so key and kind of solving it. So I'll leave it at those three. I think those have been kind of like the big three that have been challenging. But I think it's a matter of just putting the right strategies in place. They're not like insurmountable challenges, I would say. And we have really, really strong adoption. I think the beauty of Glean is just how simple the UI is and how easy it is to use. So it's not like we need to do a lot of enablement around how to use the tool from just like a navigation standpoint, et cetera.
That's a great point. Great advice and a great point. Glean is easy to crawl with, and then the enablement comes in when it's time to get into building and creating. And that
Exactly.
actually feeds beautifully into our next question. When you started to open up agent creation for all users, how were you approaching and how are you approaching agent governance?
Yeah, this one comes back to the publishing process that I mentioned, that every user has access to create their own agent, but they're not able to publish it unless they go through our review process. And so, in terms of kind of how we evaluate, we just try to understand a little bit more about the use case they're trying to solve. We recommend a specific testing period for them to test out the agent and ensuring the quality is there because can take some tinkering. We also recommend, if it's a chatbot type of agent, having specific language and links to resources if folks are not getting the answer that they want initially or if they need more information. So we have some best practices that we kind of standardize across the different types of agents that can be built. And then those are referenced as we review agents that come through our queue in terms of folks wanting to publish them. But those are kind of some of the things that we're thinking about when it comes to governing, because it is a challenge, right? A lot of people are building agents and they want to put their great work out there, but we also want to keep the agent library clean and make sure that it's easy to find the agents that are going to be most impactful. And we also want to ensure that Glean agents are delivering a high quality experience for our users, because it's very easy to lose trust and it's a lot harder to gain it. And right now we have a lot of trust built in Glean and the responses that people are seeing. So we want to be mindful of that and kind of safeguard it.
I think that's a great call out. Now getting into, your agent launch, love this question. Thinking more about the ideathon, how big were the groups?
Yeah, so we actually did it initially just for our sales group. So we kind of broke it out by team because I think it helps you, depending on the size of your company, this might be different. But you don't want, too many folks where it's going to be overwhelming or the use cases are just so different that people cannot relate to them. So I think building it out by function could be really useful. And given that this was kind of a live moment and the submission process kind of happened through a Google Doc, actually, it was fine, even if a lot of people kind of joined the session, because there wasn't necessarily we weren't doing any building live necessarily outside of the demo. So it could really work for either size, but I think separating by function, just to make sure the use cases are relevant and people can vote on them and they'll be meaningful to the folks reviewing them, would be the most useful way to approach it.
That's
And
great.
it's similar to if you look at the Glean template library, I think those are like good ways to separate something like an ideathon.
Love it. All right, thank you. Couple last few questions for you. Um, this next one, when it comes to adoption, what kind of usage are you looking for to consider a Reddit employee an adopter of Glean? Are there any specific metrics you use?
We're looking at weekly active users right now as our adoption metric. We also track with monthly active usage as well. We are finding just really high adoption on a daily basis too, especially when you consider search is a piece of that. But our kind of core metric right now is weekly active users.
Awesome.
And we do look at that by, I just want to add here, by department, just to understand adoption across the various groups. So that's been really helpful for us.
Awesome. Then I know you mentioned that this is actually something new that you're starting is these power user groups. But question from Rachel is, what do the meeting agendas typically look like? Or maybe better question of what do you expect them to look like as you get started with these power user groups?
Yeah, this is a great question. I've just been spending some time on it, so it's very timely. I think one of the pieces here that we're thinking about doing is spotlighting a specific use case and actually kind of building it out together, or kind of brainstorming and strategizing. The other like key piece that will be standing on this agenda is any new feature updates or new things that we want to kind of evangelize across the broader group, so that these power users can then go be spokespeople for these changes or kind of new area that we might want to lean into. So I think we'll probably start the meeting with that section and then spend kind of the second half on more of like a brainstorming type of topic, whether that's like a use case that we want to scale out more, or a specific like pain point that someone might be experiencing that we want to spend some time on. So that's how I'm thinking about it right now. It could evolve as we launch and kind of figure out like the right size for this group and grow out this community. I've had a lot of interest already, so I'm starting to think about what kind of the right size and like forum might be here.
That's great and very fair. If there's one thing we know about AI is that things evolve quickly. So makes sense
Exactly.
that it is your plan for now and it may need to evolve. Well, final question for you from today. This one is around ROI, which, as I know you mentioned, it is certainly a work in progress. But question from Michael is, how are you measuring ROI at Reddit? Are there any specific metrics that you're using?
Yeah, so this is where we're kind of just getting started on this measurement journey, I would say, in terms of the impact that we're driving from Glean. One of the things that I mentioned earlier was we're looking at starting to look at time savings. So just from a productivity standpoint, how much productivity are we driving? And then I think when we start thinking about revenue and like the impact that Glean is driving in that standpoint, there probably won't be a one size fits all way to measure this across all of our agents. It will be more on a case by case basis. Some of our agents will be true revenue drivers that we'll be able to tie a revenue number to, and other agents are more about just providing that productivity gain. So really thinking about like how we're going to do that holistically across a really large library of agents. And then obviously there's impact to be derived from just regular usage of chat and search that we also want to quantify. So we're just getting started on that journey. It sounds like there's another session coming up and they might be a little bit further along than us. So I would recommend tuning into that one, and I will as well, to see what we might be able to learn for ourselves.
I love it. Yes, definitely something I think we can all learn from. So perfect. Well, We will pause there with questions. Alexandra, thank you so much for your time. I will speak for everyone on and say it was great to learn from you and great to hear, number one, the adoption at Reddit, but more importantly, how you got there and the journey you've taken in trying to drive adoption and upskill every employee to be able to effectively incorporate AI into workflows. So thank you so much, first of all. And then thank you to all of you who have attended our second guest lecture here at Glean Academy. We really hope that you've enjoyed it. If there are any questions that you did not get answered, please feel free to reach out in our Gleaniverse, on our website, however you need to. We would love to help with your questions. And we hope to see you all next week for our third and final session within this guest lecture series. This one, as Alexandra and I mentioned, will be focused on proving the ROI of AI programs. And we have Fu, a director of digital workplace and identity at Pure Storage, with us to join the conversation. So again, thank you all so much for your time. Alexandra, thank you again. And I hope everyone has a great rest of their days. Thank you all.